I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. This week it is my pleasure to welcome Christy Wegener, director and producer of the new Netflix documentary, I Am Vanessa Guillen. Here's the trailer.
Her case is grabbing headlines across the nation. People want to know, where is Vanessa Guillen?
Where's my sister? They know where she is, and I want them to speak up.
This was not one of those cases the military can sweep under the rug.
Vanessa's always been the bravest of all of us. Something was wrong with her the few months after she was stationed at Fort Hood.
Not being able to sleep, losing weight. She would tell me that things weren't what they seemed.
Dijo, sí he sido acusada por un superior ahí en Fort Hood. Es una base de corrupción, de maldad.
I called the staff sergeant, and he's like, we don't know anything about her. You guys don't have cameras, nothing. And they were like, no.
The military did not give a damn.
Fort Hood seems to cultivate the worst of the worst.
A lot of missing soldiers, a lot of dead soldiers, a lot of bad there.
She's in the army. She's supposed to be safe there.
Ya traté yo y Natalie Khawam. Estos animales, dije, no me van a buscar a mi niña. Yo tengo que buscar a mi hija yo.
The Guillen family were not going to stay quiet.
The Hispanic culture is the sleeping giant, and the Guillen family woke it up.
People using my sister as a resemblance of themselves.
Hashtag I Am Vanessa Guillen. I remember saying, she is us.
It kept going and growing.
What's her name? Vanessa! Loud and proud!
Sexual assault scandals are the new norm for the military. Clearly an epidemic.
We had no other choice but to go and fight for legislation under my sister's name.
The military counts on survivors and their families staying quiet, and they miscalculated it dramatically.
If we got Congress to listen, then we can get Congress to pass the bill.
This is our last chance. They do not support the full Vanessa Guillen Act. We have to really push on them.
This is not a Republican, Democratic issue. This is not a race issue. This is a human issue, so it should be everyone's issue.
That was the trailer for the new Netflix documentary, I Am Vanessa Guillen. And this is Factual America. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects. Vanessa Guillen was 20 years old when she was found murdered at a U.S. Army base. Rather than submit to silence, her family fought for justice and change. Join us as we talk with director and producer Christy Wegener about the bravery and courage of Vanessa's family as they took on the U.S. Army and brought their fight to the halls of power in Washington, D.C. to ensure that justice is served, not just for Vanessa, but for all victims of sexual abuse. Ultimately, the tragic story has an uplifting ending and helps us reflect on what being part of a family truly means. Stay tuned. Christy Wegener, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you?
Really good. We've had an incredible reaction to the film. It's been out for a couple of weeks, and we've been blown away.
Yes, just to remind our listeners and viewers, we're talking about I Am Vanessa Guillen. It's streaming now on Netflix. So yeah, again, welcome. Thank you for joining us, and congratulations. And a thank you for bringing this story to the screen. It's very much appreciated. I really enjoyed watching it. Maybe you can tell, for how we usually kick things off is maybe explain to our listeners what I Am Vanessa Guillen is all about. Maybe a brief synopsis.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a film that really explores the pervasive issue of sexual misconduct in the military, which has become an epidemic. And we look at this issue through the case of Vanessa Guillen, who was a soldier stationed at a base in Texas called Fort Hood. Vanessa was being sexually harassed by other soldiers at the base, her sort of chain of command. And she ultimately was murdered by another soldier on the base. This happened in April of 2020, right when COVID hit. And her family, at the time, Vanessa just went missing. No one knew she'd been murdered. No one knew what happened because the soldier who murdered her essentially hid the crime, concealed her remains. And Vanessa's family launched a basically nationwide search to find her, and really utilized the media, galvanized the community, specifically the Latino community in Texas, to really get behind them and keep pressure on the base, who was being somewhat quiet about Vanessa's disappearance. And they just kept the attention on the case, and ultimately Vanessa's remains were found a little more than 2 months after she went missing. But we basically explore this big issue through this singular case, and focus on the family's efforts.
Right, and it's amazing. I mean, I guess every singular case potentially could be done this way, but what is amazing to me is that the singular case is, as you say, it shines a light on this issue of sexual harassment in the military, but it's done. This one singular case has done so much. It's an absolute, and it shines a light on so many things. And I mean, what I found interesting too is that the family from the very beginning. There's just that something. There's an instinct there. There's a mother's instinct, a family instinct that knew, because she hadn't been gone. I mean, even within hours, knew something horrible had happened. They didn't expect necessarily this, but they could sense something was going on, and they had inclinations that the things weren't all as they seemed at Fort Hood before this, didn't they?
Yeah, that's such a great point. I mean, yeah, there's sort of this Gloria, Vanessa's mother, definitely had sort of a, she felt it. She felt that something was wrong instinctually, and one incredible facet about this story is the family has just the most incredible ability to express their emotions, to not hold back, in a way that we all really relate to. You can feel how much they're worried. You can feel how much they love Vanessa. You can feel, how desperate they become. And it's sort of everyone's worst nightmare that they go through. And I think one thing that really resonates with people is that everyone can put themselves in their shoes, and in the worst way, though, imagining this is like the worst possible situation you'd never want to happen to your daughter, your sister. And I think it's one of the reasons the family's ability to communicate and express their emotions is one of the reasons everyone really were able to rally behind them. They really were able to feel what the family was going through, which was tragic.
Yeah. I mean, what do you, that's, because I was going to ask you, what's the Guillen family's secret? Because it's, like you say, well, you've mentioned this ability to communicate, but a lot of families, it's nothing against other families. A lot of families have had to go through this, unfortunately. But, from the very beginning, they were rallying people. And this wasn't something they weren't like activists, a family of activists or anything by any stretch of the imagination. But from the very beginning, rallying community. And as we'll probably talk about more further on, they didn't just stop there. They've taken it all the way to Washington and the halls of power. I mean, what is it? What's in the water that the Guillen family's drinking, and to get them to this? What do you think is the secret?
I think that this is an incredibly close-knit family, and it's true. A lot of families are, deeply connected, and of course love each other immensely. The Guillen family, I think there is a value system within the family, which is like the golden rule: do unto others as you'd have done to you. And I think, they did take this to DC. They did take on this cause because they truly did not want anyone else, any other family, to suffer in the way that they suffered. And there's something, it always makes me so emotional just to think about, because witnessing them in this, the most, horrific time of their life, in deep grief, decide they're going to stay in the public eye and fight for the greater good. I think, they're just exceptional in that way. And they really do care about other people. They work from that place. They have an immense level of love in the family. And it's just an incredible value system. And they're also, as you can see in the film, they're so incredibly well-spoken, so smart, persistent, And there's an incredible strength there. I mean, they took on the biggest institution in the country. You have to be incredibly courageous and brave to do that. Yeah. So it's just an exceptional combination of qualities.
Yeah. And as you said, they took on one of the biggest institutions in the country. And I mean, you've already sort of alluded to, what did the U.S. Army do or not do? First, before she was murdered, because people should watch the film. I don't want to give away too much, but I think it's pretty well known and a matter of record. She was, now we know for sure what the family knew from the beginning, that she was harassed, sexually harassed. What did the U.S. Army do about it?
The sexual harassment and assault issue is something that the military has been dealing with for decades. I mean, there's been a series of hugely high-profile cases that come and go. A lot of them happened in the early 90s, and they've just continued. And, the Army has definitely, military overall, not just the Army, but the whole military has tried to find effective ways to deal with this problem, but they've continuously fall short. It's a difficult problem. The military is huge. They have a bunch of programs, but they're essentially ineffective because in the military, the biggest issue is, there's the chain of command. So all roads lead back to the chain of command. So if you're assaulted or if you're being harassed, your course of action in the military is to report to the chain of command. And oftentimes they're the perpetrators or they're friends with the perpetrators. And so, it's not effective. The other factor that really allows this problem to be so persistent and pervasive in the military is the military has its own justice system that's not identical to the civilian justice system. In the military, again, the chain of command has huge oversight over, issues like what evidence gets approved or not approved in a case. They, often pick the judge. They decide previously they decided whether a case would even be prosecuted or not. That's not normal. In the civilian world, a boss of a company would not be able to, make those decisions in the legal world. So those are factors that really have allowed this problem to continue to be so persistent.
And then there's an issue of culture, at least in certain places. And I guess as the film points out, certainly Fort Hood outside Killeen, Texas, I'm well aware of it, had its own toxic and notorious culture there as well, didn't it?
Yeah, one of our subjects in the film, Lucy Del Guadio, says this so well. She served. If you're serving, there's always certain bases that are considered the hot spots, the bases where, corruption is especially bad. Fort Hood is, on that list for sure. That's one of the bigger bases, so harder base to manage. But there's definitely, the rumor mill goes around, and there's definitely those bases that are especially problematic.
Okay. And then, so Vanessa's, she goes missing. We find out she was murdered. And, we've already talked about what the issue has been with the criminal justice system within the Army. But it's almost like the Army sort of closes ranks after this all happens. And you've got this amazing story back to the family. I mean, a family, because you even had this point. Someone said that the parents couldn't even go on to the base because they're worried about their immigration status, right? So, but they didn't shy away. They took on the U.S. Army, and even while this investigation is going on, when did they kind of start then also thinking about taking this to Washington and getting and helping to change things? It's very quickly after this all happens, isn't it?
Yeah, Vanessa's remains were found essentially in late June, early July of that year, 2020, and the family was in D.C. in August of that same year. So fighting for a bill, introducing legislation, they met with, at that time, the former President Trump.
Right.
So, you know, everything did sort of evolve really quickly. Their lawyer, Natalie Khawam, was a huge sort of reason for that. But yeah, they, you know, I mean, a day felt like a week for them during the search. You know, so, you know, they really struggled to get information from the military. You know, even after Vanessa's remains were found, I think Don Christensen in the film says, you know, the military relies on the Privacy Act to keep information from victims' families. And so, you know, the Guillen family were in a constant battle. They, of course, want to know what happened to Vanessa in her final moments of life as much as they could. So, yeah, the sort of fight continued, and it was, you know, a multi-purpose fight to get more information about what happened and why it happened, but also to prevent this from happening to anyone else.
Yeah. Well, I think that's actually not a bad place to give our listeners and viewers an early break. We'll be right back with Christy Wegener, director and producer of I Am Vanessa Guillen, currently streaming on Netflix. You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Alamo Pictures to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Christy Wegener, director and producer of I Am Vanessa Guillen, currently streaming on Netflix. Christy, we're talking about I Am Vanessa Guillen and the family's heroic efforts to make sure that Vanessa didn't die in vain. And you're with the family almost the whole journey, aren't you? I mean, how did you become involved? It's quite incredible what you've captured on film.
Yeah, you know, we, you know, I, like many people, heard about Vanessa's disappearance probably a week after she was missing. Her sister Mayra, her older sister, was posting on Facebook, you know, asking for anyone to help in finding her sister. I'm an older sister. When I saw Mayra, it really resonated with me. You know, as a family, we dealt with, you know, violence and different, you know, some trauma. And I personally just took a vested interest in the outcome. Like everyone else, I was hoping Vanessa would be found. And it was really devastating, you know, how this played out. And so I'm in New York. I ended up going to DC just to support the family as they went, and they would have marches. They would introduce, you know, they were introducing legislation. And so, you know, in going down there, I started to get to know their attorney and talk to them. And, you know, it was a 4 or 5 month process of, you know, discussing all of this. But we realized there would be value in a documentary, especially as they, you know, the first bill failed and they were about to pursue the second. So we started filming right before they started introducing the second bill. Yeah, and then we were just with them, and they were, you know, so willing to be vulnerable on camera. They didn't really even acknowledge our presence, which was, you know, good. But yeah, it's just a relationship. You know, they were very focused on, you know, their mission. So we were very fortunate to be able to follow them.
Yeah, I think don't you even capture that it's even in the film where they are debating it in some ways, whether to even, you know, it's subtly done, but do you really want, I think someone says, do you really want to make this film, or do you really want to, I don't know, is that right? I mean, I think they're having a bit of a debate about whether to or why put your, you know, they're living in the public eye, these people who hadn't, you know, and putting themselves out there.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I know, I don't know that we put that in they do talk about whether or not they want to continuously go to DC and pursue legislation.
Maybe that's what I'm catching.
Yeah, and they did as a family, you know, of course, have a discussion about whether or not there was value in doing a film. And I think that was internal discussion they had over several weeks. But ultimately, they did feel that, you know, it felt that we were aligned in the sense that we were in a way benefiting their mission because, when there's cameras and you're going to DC, and it puts an added layer of pressure on legislators in a way. It's sort of like, well, if you don't support this, it's captured. If you do support it, it's captured. And I think they saw value in that, and we saw value in, we're capturing something historic. I mean, what they've done is the most sweeping change to military law, I think, ever. So it was mutually beneficial, and it didn't feel exploitative, which it's so easy for a crime film to feel that way. So that was really fortunate.
And you have some I have some experience with some filmmakers who've tried to film on Capitol Hill. It's not the easiest thing to do, but you've got you managed to get access to senators and congressmen's offices and discussion. I mean, I'm sure you weren't there on the debates. They wouldn't let you do that. But it's quite impressive what you were able to, the access you were able to achieve. And it's the other element is there's very few things that are bipartisan, and I know it's not necessarily completely bipartisan, but there's definitely people on both sides of the aisle that were very, very supportive of this legislation.
Yeah, no, thank you. Those are both good points. And I have to make sure you give credit, because I think access-wise, a big part of that is Natalie Khawam, the attorney, who knows, so many people on Capitol Hill, and I think really helped facilitate access and saw the advantage of, for the point I made earlier about, there is something to having cameras in a room. Right. And I think she even said something, and this didn't make it in the film, but Natalie, the lawyer, says, you can trust in what someone says if they say it in front of a camera. She said she worries if a politician, for instance, wouldn't let a camera in a room. So she questions the validity of what they're telling her. So, and then, to the point about the bipartisanship, it was one of the few bills in the most divisive time in history that was bipartisan. And, it had to be in order to get passed. There was such great support on both sides of the aisle, and we really tried to show that as much as possible because it was unique.
Yeah, no, I think it was very impressive and actually refreshing in that sense to see that people that there's still hope that people can work together. But there are many heroes in this tragic story, but I think what shines through too, we've back to the family again, but these sisters, Mayra and Lupe, are just absolutely incredible. And I don't think they're stopping from what I can tell. Are there any updates on them in terms of where they're heading in their lives?
Yeah, no, Mayra and Lupe, I feel so hopeful about the future of the country with leaders like Mayra and Lupe. Mayra is definitely going to pursue a career in politics, and I think is in the process of figuring out that plan, which hopefully will sort of evolve very quickly here. And then she's also running the I Am Vanessa Guillen Foundation, which I think is going to be incredibly helpful to survivors of sexual misconduct. Lupe is in college and has made enormous strides. I think in the film, you see that she really struggles emotionally and has really made huge strides. She wasn't able to play soccer because that's what she did with Vanessa. She's actually able to play again. And I think she's figuring out her career path. I know journalism was something she's really considering exploring. But, they both have immense potential and promise, and I think we're going to continue to hear from them both as the years move forward.
And both are, Mayra in particular, one thing that comes out in the film is that there is still more to be done, and that legislation wasn't the end of it. Is that part of what she's also working on in terms of how things are handled in the military?
Correct. Right now, actually, as we speak, I think today she's working on, they're introducing additional provisions that weren't passed last year. They're actually working on getting them passed, some of those right now this month. So I know she's a big part of that advocacy. And then there's another bill that will continue to build on the progress they made with the first bill that she'll be supporting next year. So I think she's definitely back and forth between Houston and DC, and I think will continue to be a huge voice in this fight for more justice.
And then back to the original case, and speaking of justice, we had it's only a few days ago, isn't it, that one of the, well, at least the accomplice of was finally brought to justice. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that was a huge relief. Cecily Aguilar, who was the accomplice, she participated in the dismemberment and burial of Vanessa's remains, and withheld information while the family was searching for months. So she, up until this really recent point, last week, I believe, or a week and a half ago, she was trying to get her confession thrown out. She did that, I think, 3 times. And so she's recently finally pled guilty. And, I think that was a watershed moment for the family and provided some relief. And so the next step is sentencing, which should happen in the next 80 days or so.
Okay. And what do you want the legacy of this film to be?
I think it's critical that we show that there is hope for democracy in America, and that it's also really important that this is not an issue that we allow to continue to persist without action in terms of legislation and as a culture. And so I hope the film continues to spread awareness and keep this issue at the forefront. And as the lawyer in the film says, it needs to be a mainstream issue. It can't just be for members of the military. It needs to be for everyone to continue to sort of focus on, because, these are everyone's sons and daughters and friends that are being harmed in this institution. So awareness is important.
Well, and thank you for raising that awareness, and thanks to the family, and thanks for this film, because I think it's ultimately it's quite uplifting. I found it. I don't know if that was your intention or what you imagined was going to happen when you first started. I mean, did you? Because you started really filming sort of the second round with trying to get the legislation through, but you didn't know how that was going to play out. Did you imagine you would be coming to this place, that this is the film that you were heading towards?
That's a good point. We really didn't know how the legislation was going to play out, what the result would be, if there would be an ending that was reasonable or interesting for the film. It was incredible that it played out the way it did. But yeah, all very unpredictable elements. And, we were very hopeful because we were witnessing the family. They'd already been through the disappointment of the first bill failing. So, I honestly I remember I was just like, I don't know how we're going to handle. I couldn't handle watching their disappointment if it didn't pass. So really pleased it worked out the way it did.
Well, we are too. Well, I think we're actually coming close to the end of our time together. But what's next for you? I mean, I'm sure you're still enjoying the success of your film, I Am Vanessa Guillen, but do you have anything else lined up? What's next for you?
Yeah, this is really just further sort of impressed upon me that I want to work on projects that, have a bigger sort of impact in the world, issues that are important, although they're really difficult emotionally to work on. So for me, I'm looking at a few projects that also tackle some pretty big issues, gender discrimination. I can't speak too specifically about, but, staying in this sort of genre and world is important.
Well, I hope you do, and thank you. And if we haven't scared you off, we'd love to have you on again when those one of those projects drops, and hopefully is on Netflix again. Just to remind our listeners and viewers that we've been talking with Christy Wegener, director and producer of I Am Vanessa Guillen, currently streaming on Netflix. Highly recommend that you check it out. Thanks again, Christy. It's been a pleasure having you on.
It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Matthew. I appreciate it so much.
I also would like to thank those who helped make this podcast possible. A big shout out to Sam and Joe at Intersound Audio in York, England. A big thanks to Amy Ord, our podcast manager at Alamo Pictures, who ensures we continue getting great guests onto the show and that everything otherwise runs smoothly. Finally, a big thanks to our listeners. Many of you have been with us for 4 incredible seasons. Please keep sending us feedback and episode ideas, whether it is on YouTube, social media, or directly by email. Please also remember to like us and share us with your friends and family, wherever you happen to listen or watch podcasts. This is Factual America, signing off. You've been listening to Factual America. This podcast is produced by Alamo Pictures, specializing in documentaries, television, and shorts about the USA for international audiences. Head on down to the show notes for more information about today's episode, our guests, and the team behind the podcast. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Alamo Pictures. Be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing our films, and to connect with our team. Our homepage is alamopictures.co.uk.